Come along, children. Now we're going to have a little music.
What is up, guys? I'm Ace.
This is RB3.
And this is our breakdown of the film Parasite, Bong Joon-Ho's newest thriller movie that is out in theaters that is captivating audiences pretty much all over the world. And it's already getting probably the most Oscar hype I've seen personally. And what I wanted to do and what I pitched to you, RB3, is for us to break down this movie a little bit more than we're allowed to in a general review, considering there are so many spoilers in this movie and there's so much layers that are laid out to us by Bong Joon-Ho that I feel like we would do it injustice to simply say it's a really good movie and you should see it. It has a lot to say. Go check it out. I feel like that's too limited of a review, but since we're so afraid of spoilers, we're not allowed to dive into it a little bit deeper. Let's just dive into it deeper, man. Let's get into the nitty-gritty of this movie. So obviously everyone who's watching this has seen the movie because this is a spoiler breakdown. But let's start out with the general theme of the movie, because there's a lot of thematic elements in this movie and there's a lot of layers, as I said before. But the general one is one that's being kind of felt throughout 2019, considering you consider Joker to also have the same theme, but the issue of class.
Yeah, well, I don't think Joker, that was the only thing that Joker, but yeah, for sure.
I agree with you. I think Joker has a lot of other stuff that doesn't work. But anyways, class.
But this movie's more directly about class.
It's about class, and it's about the classism issues, and it's about two families, one rich, one poor, and one serving the other. However, one is manipulating and almost deceiving the other, and that's the poor family. And you have this I don't want to say conflict, but almost conflict between who you're rooting for and who's right in this situation. Because throughout the entire film, this poor family is kind of manipulating and deceiving this rich family and kind of stepping on everyone else who gets in their way, considering they're getting everyone fired in order for them to get a job. And it kind of raises questions of the idea of the rich being the villains simply because they're the rich, or because of their discrimination, because of what? To me, that's a genuinely good question, because I feel like that's a question that is being raised in today's time, and it's a very relevant question as far as what responsibility does someone in a higher class have to the people in the lower class. Yeah,
I think this movie does kind of show from a poor person's perspective how someone can from that status can interpret the rich, and how they use what their interpretation of rich behavior is. I mean, we see the main character. He goes in. He says I think he says he's American, and he goes into all of these different things in his resume, and he's just totally faking the entire thing, and it makes a fake acceptance letter because of how gullible these rich people are. He gets his sister employed. She says she went to some art institute in Chicago, and that they were cousins or whatever. And again, it's just all a downward spiral of getting to understand how this underprivileged family who hasn't had the opportunity to prosper finally takes that opportunity and just runs with it. And I think overall, I think this movie does pretty much show the villainization of rich people pretty well. And I think pretty well because I think rich people are evil. Ace, in case that wasn't clear. And I think that what Parasite does do really well, though, it goes into depth in showing you how the father character, who's played by Bong Joon-Ho's muse, I forget his name off the top of my head, but he's in every film that he's done. The father character is just driven insane by his poverty. I mean, he literally allows the family to get fumigated because he's so poor that he doesn't feel that he thinks it's a free way to get extermination. He overhears what the rich father, I forget the rich father's name off the top of my head.
Yeah, we could say rich father, poor father.
Yeah, rich father. Rich dad, poor dad. I think what the rich father, the way he was talking about the driver behind his back, all the way he smells, has a very distinct smell to him.
He was talking about him.
Yeah, exactly. And when he overhears that starts the cycle of starting to drive him insane to where we see that ending, and it starts to come out, starts to come out from there. Foreshadowing.
Absolutely. But can I give you some questions then?
Yeah,
because
sure.
these are things you bring up. I believe, and it's this is always a difficult conversation when it comes to conversations around morality. But I have to go there because this movie is all about it, and how poverty and richness affect morality. There's a great quote in this movie where the mom, the poorer mom, who's pretending to be the housemaid now, the new housemaid, says a line where she says, rich people are naturally nicer because they don't have other problems to worry about. Their problems get ironed out by the money.
That's a gunshot right there. Somebody needs to add a gunshot to that.
And it's a line that is kind of the thesis of the entire film. How does poverty affect morality, and how does, richness affect morality? And does, certain moral things that, are questionable, are they simply allowed? Are they okay because they're poor? Are they allowed to do those things simply because of their situation and their poverty?
Yeah, I think this.
I'm asking you.
I think this movie shows you how society puts these people in the position, not them and of themselves. I mean, we see every individual person of the poor family. They all have an extreme amount of talent. They are all probably one of them individually can probably outsmart the entire family all together. And that's how smart they are. That's how intelligent they are. But I think this movie goes to show you that, because you're put under those excruciating circumstances from, beginning to end, because we're stuck in this society where we're stuck in the same class system economically for pretty much our entire lives, these people are a lot smarter. They're a lot tougher. They're a lot more able to endure and a lot more street smart and a lot more able to infiltrate this family and get under their skin so easily. And I think that just goes to show you that, a lot of poor people are really, really smart, really, really talented people. They just never have the opportunity to express that because the rich people are just hogging up the space.
Sure, but my question was, does that excuse their actions?
Listen, I personally listen, when it comes to the conversation of rich and poor, I think we have to take into account the amount that this family had been stomped on before. Like their sense of morality had been stomped out of them from the very beginning. Literally, like I said, to the point where the father thinks it's an acceptable behavior to let fumigation come into all of their lungs because they want a free extermination. That's how broken they are as human beings. They have no morality because the morality has been beaten out of them. Now, does that
excuse their behavior?
I think the movie offers an empathetic a view of that. I don't think it excuses it per se because there are characters who end up losing their lives and there are sacrifices at the end. But
sure.
I think the most poignant part at the end of this movie is when and we haven't even gotten into like the full spoiler territory.
Oh
yet.
yeah, no, we'll get there.
But yeah, I think the whole poem at the end of the movie where the boy is writing his dad and how he has these dreams and ambitions to buy the house that his dad's entrapped in one day. He talks. He says that poem. And he says that, or not poem. I'm sorry, letter.
Yeah.
To his dad, and we hear that and we understand this entire movie is just about. And this is not an American movie, but it's about that kind of American dream that people have, the idea of getting out of the poor and working their way up
to become rich.
Yeah. And that's a very American thing, but that's not just an American thing. That's a very much a thing
it's worldwide.
That's worldwide. And I think this movie does a really good job communicating that.
Yeah, I mean, I'll come in with you with another question, just throwing it back to the other side because I know you already said it, but I'll ask you again. Are the rich simply the bad guy because they're rich?
Yeah.
Is it that simple?
I think that's what this movie.
Regardless of their beliefs, regardless of their heart, regardless of their kindness. Are they just predetermined to be the bad guy?
I think this movie paints the rich not. I think it paints the father in particular as
the daughter?
As a more nefarious figure.
What about the son? Are they predetermined to grow up and be exactly what their parents are?
Well, we do see the very privileged behavior that the rich daughter has throughout the story. I mean, she literally can't go 2 seconds without making out with one of her tutors, either if it was the guy before or the guy after. She put the same spell on both of them.
Yeah, but I can argue that's just youth, man.
That's youth, but also, I mean, come on now. Do you think if that was, for one, the fact that she insists on having this tutor just because I think what this movie really was getting at is that she has a desire for male attention, the daughter at least. So then she literally has her mom hire an entire tutor for her just for the sole purpose of having some sort of attention around her. I think that's a very privileged mindset to even start to instill on a 10-year-old or 11-year-old or however, she was like 13 in that movie?
Nah, more like 16?
15, 16, whatever. But that's very much a privileged kind of installed mindset. And even if it's not a conscious thing of the characters, it is a subconscious thing. I think that's very important. I think this movie is all about how subconsciously the rich people's attitudes are towards their subservience.
Does that mean they deserve to have some sort of retribution because of that?
I think anybody who looks down on, belittles on servitude or help or any of that matter kind of does. And we see multiple examples through this movie of all of them having this kind of really odd treatment from each of the people they're supposed to be representing. I mean, we talked about how the rich father said all those terrible things about the way the poor father smells. We see, like I said, the daughter, the rich daughter and the son. They're, she's kind of playing his angle and dating him. She has her own thing going on, like in terms of controlling her. The person who's working for her, the boy, not as much. We don't see as much from the little boy because he's too young. But we also see from the mom character. I mean, she overly relies on the maid to some extent. I mean, I don't know. I've never had a maid, so I don't know what expectations of maids are. But to me, she was asking the poor mother to do things that I think are way outside of the lines for maids or nannies or whatever. So
yeah, here's another point that the film brings up. It brings up the point of selfishness and the idea of looking out for you and your family, and that's it, right? I mean, you can say that about the rich family, the poor family, but you can also say about that in the reveal of this film, where we find out that the former housemaid, actually has her husband living under the house, which then leads to other questions about morality as far as what to do in that situation. Should we help simply because of their situation, or should we just say, I don't care? I have what I'm doing. And that's literally something that's brought up in the dialogue in the film, where she says, why would I help you? And she says, help me because you're another person, because you're another, like, look at my situation as a human being and feel bad for me in some way.
Right.
And how that gets muddled between when you're poor and when you're rich.
Yeah.
And how there's literally a scene in the movie, the same scene where she says the rich don't have these same problems we have, where the dad starts to say, did we do the right thing? You think the driver we got fired has another job? And then, do you think the maid has a new job? Like, he starts to question his own morality. And then the daughter responds and says, who cares? We look for ourselves, and that's it. That's what we do. And it's this idea of helping your fellow human, of helping your fellow man, and how that gets blurred between classes and how certain classes view that differently than other classes, how you have to step on someone else in order to get to where you're going. But how that's what the rich kind of do already, right?
Yeah, I think that's the part of it that goes to show what the mentality that society puts us through, and the society that this quote unquote, values, capitalism, whatever you want to call it, that you have to build your way from the bottom and make your way to the top. The whole idea that's instilled in you is this kind of crabs in a bucket mentality. You're gonna pull the next poor person next to you down so you could get above him or above her. And I think that's really the case of what we see between both of the families, both the maid and both the former maid and her husband, who's underground, and of the new family. I think we see that all around. And going back to the point of morality, I think this movie gives you all different types of shades of morality, right? I think that our central point of view family, their morality is really, really low, but we empathize with them more because A, we follow them through the entire story, and B, we understand their financial position and the sacrifices that they have to make. But we don't see that from the other maid or from the husband who's living underground. So just because we are following the family's perspective, we're not getting anything. We're not connecting necessarily to those people. So we feel less bad when, let's say, the former maid like tumbles down the stairs and like cracks open her head. We feel less bad about that. We feel less. we are rooting for our characters to get out of the situation. Okay, so what happens to them? Nobody really cares as much. Same thing that happens to the rich people. The rich people are probably better moral characters than the poor family, but because we've seen them have such an advantage in life as compared to our characters, we don't even recognize them as protagonists or leads or anything. We just kind of let them live their world.
Yeah, but I guess what I'm trying to get at is how humanity can be seen, how people are seen through just a simple lens. Obviously, society has certain things that predetermine how we view each other, and we can go into entire stories about that. But what I'm trying to say is how we perceive the rich family to be the villains simply because they're the rich family. And how I have a question as far as to you, as far as the rich father at the end. Do you think he deserves that? Does he deserve his fate because of his discrimination towards the father? His discrimination in quiet, right? This isn't a guy who's going around yelling at poor people. This is a guy who's hiring people. This is a guy who's employing other people, who has his own company. But he also has his own, personal discrimination, his own classist ideology, but he keeps it to himself. Because of that, does he deserve his fate of getting freaking stabbed by the poor father?
Yeah, I mean that's a great question. I think for he in particular. No, as an individual, no.
Because he's not a cruel man.
He's not a cruel dude. He seemingly pays him pretty well, but he does also dehumanizes him throughout the film. I mean, we see him literally tell the driver like, "Hey, just don't talk to me," just have moments of just clocking out.
I'm not saying if he's of course, but that's a flawed human being.
That's a flawed human being. Yeah, but I think more to the point, and there's a Bible verse that I always go back to that I personally love is not love, but it's interesting to think about. Matthew 19:24. Again, I tell you, it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than somebody who is rich to enter the kingdom of God. That's what that Bible verse is saying, is that it's just harder for somebody who's rich to be a good person. Yeah. It's just tough. Well, and this movie pretty much goes and portrays that by showing you how the rich father's mentality, how he, from at least from the perspective of the poor father, he's not somebody who deserves his wealth. He's not somebody who deserves his position. So that's why I think, and again, the poor father, he's mentally deranged. Like he's to me that's not deserved, primarily because it's really the poor father's mental illness break that led to that moment. But I think from the poor father perspective, he figures that the rich dad has no morality anyway because he's rich and because he has this much privilege. So So from the poor's perspective, yeah, he probably deserved that. But I think overall, the movie's not saying he did.
It's interesting, yeah. And I also like that you bring up that verse, and I'll give more credence to it. But I just kind of want to finish up on this point as far as the idea that the rich father and the poor father are both kind of doing the same thing and looking out for them and their family, and that's it. They're both being selfish in that way. That's kind of a human thing to do, is to be, as the head of a household, for example, for a father, to look out for your family, protect your family, provide for your family, protect your family, provide for your family, and how both both dads are doing that and are both saying, me and my son, me and my wife, me and my daughter, that's it, F everyone else. And the poor father is saying, me and my son, me and my wife, me and my daughter, F everyone else. They're both saying the same thing, but they're both in different situations. And to go back to the Bible verse, it's interesting you say that, because it's this idea that the more rich you become, the more closed off you become from the rest of the world, and the less you can empathize, because the less you can personally experience their issues. It's the idea of the rich building walls for their home or building extra security to keep everyone out, and you become a further disconnection, and how certain rich people don't even go to grocery stores because they have other people do that for them. That's the idea that kind of is laid out in this film. So interesting, the idea of empathizing with others. And I think that's such a great point to this movie that I really give all the credits to Bong Joon-Ho for.
Yeah, no, same. I think that's I think this movie overall, it shows all different kinds of layers. It's not a black and white type story. There are a lot of like layers to dissect. Who's right in this situation? Who's right in that situation? Who deserved this fate? Who deserved that fate? One question that that is a legitimate question, I feel like, is the son actually alive at the end? Is that because we clearly see him get hit in the head with that giant rock, and I think in the epilogue he says he loses a chunk of his brain or whatever. But I think there is a way to interpret this movie where it is from his perspective, and this was all some sort of fever dream before his death, or this is all some sort of something else. So we never know. This movie leaves a lot of angles for interpretation. It says a lot about class, society, but it also says a lot about people and characters. So that to me is why it's probably the finest film of the year.
Absolutely. All right, guys, let us know what you thought of Parasite in the comments down below. Also, make sure you follow us. I'm at Squad Leader Ace.
I'm at Director RB3.
And you can check us out for more of our opinions on certain movies. And stay tuned to First Cut, where you can check out more of our reviews and our episode and our thoughts on the meaning of podcast, where you can check out more of our dissection of directors and their films. And for First Cut, I'm Ace.
This is RB3.
And we are peacing out. Peace out, guys.